Changing Opportunities, the Switch Now podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to this edition of the Switch Now podcast, a chance for you to find out how we work here at Switch Now. In the first of this two-part special, we visit the farm, located just outside St Neots in a small village called Southoe. In part 2, we'll be interviewing Jeff, and he'll tell us about the remains of an old house, which he discovered recently and was pulled down in the 1930s, and he'll also talk about how it took him 4 years to build the massive farmhouse on site. But first of all, in part 1, we're going to take a walk round of the farm with Janet.
You're listening to the Switch Now podcast.
So welcome everyone to the farm in Southoe, and I must say it's a lovely atmosphere here, and this is Janet.
Good morning everybody.
Good morning Janet, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So what we're going to do is have a little walk round of the whole farm, and at the moment we're at the point where visitors come in, is that right?
It is, yeah. They have a separate entrance to us who are working at the farm.
Okay, so if we'd like to take a walk up, and I'll leave you to explain.
As you come in off Rectory Lane, the first thing you're greeted by is the geese, which at the minute are being very quiet, but usually they give you a very vocal greeting. We've got 9 geese that are usually out on the pond, but it looks like this morning they wanted to stay in. We do get eggs from the geese, but they only lay from February to June, so throughout the winter they don't lay eggs.
Okay.
And as you can probably hear in the background, we've got Duncan here. He's busy strimming the grass. The geese will eat the cuttings once it's been strimmed. I'd say morning to him, but he won't hear us.
He says good morning.
On the other side from the geese, the path cuts through the main field, which at the minute has got the goats in it. We do have the cattle in there, and very occasionally the sheep or the horses, but it's usually just goats and the cattle.
You can hear the road of the A1 behind us, by the way. We're not too far from that, are we?
No, probably only about 1/4 mile off the A1. As we get to the end of the goose pen, we've then got a pig pen. We've got 3 pigs in here. One of them's saddleback, she's called Bumble. The other 2 are Mangalitsa pigs, which are actually hairy pigs. They're not smooth like our British pigs. They actually originate in Hungary.
Oh right, so they've come a long way then.
Well, originally, yeah. I think they're all in bed, aren't they? Oh, you can just see them through the back, but they tend to come out for breakfast and then disappear back in until supper time.
Okay.
If it's nice and sunny, they do like a wallow. They like to cover themselves in mud, and that helps protect them from the sun as well. And then we come down. Jeff put a bridge. This is actually quite an ancient moat that runs round. It does dry up quite a lot in the summer, but come winter time it'll be full again. But Jeff actually built a footbridge across so that people could walk all the way around.
Okay,
And
that's great.
Minute, he's acquired 2 telegraph poles, which he's planning on making some sort of rope bridge, but that's work in progress.
So Janet, we have a log cabin here. Tell us about that.
It was a project that Jeff wanted to do, and it's just over 3 years ago now. No plans or anything of the actual cabin. Jeff just designed it himself. It wasn't a kit or anything. Him and Duncan mainly built it. Ian and another gentleman called Philip helped do it, and it was just a project that Jeff wanted to do. We have for the last 2 Christmases used it as Santa's grotto. Unfortunately, COVID will have put a stop to that this year, but what we have done is we'd light this up and have it decorated inside, and then we have a row of candles, well, tea light candles across the field. The children come and do crafts and have a drink and a biscuit in the stables, and then come across one family at a time to meet Father Christmas in the log cabin. So it's quite magical, really.
That sounds great. So if we keep walking, we have a wood kind of area here.
Yeah, quite a lot of lime trees in this area, but there's sycamore and I think there's an oak tree as well. And as we get round, there's crabapple trees as well. The area where the cabin is, there aren't any animals, that's just walking through. But the area to the left of the cabin, it's split into two areas. The 3 pigs we've just spoken about, the saddleback and the mangalitzas, have the first half, and then we've just recently bought 3 young boars and they're in the other half. I'd like to tell you what the pigs are, but I don't actually know. Jeff bought them from auction 6 weeks ago, but again, because of COVID, the auction wasn't as it normally is, so we don't have a lot of information about them. We just know the 3 males.
So here we are now at the orchard, and I believe you have a future project that you'd like to do here.
We do. We used to have quail, but we could never quite get it right with the housing. So what we're going to do now in the orchard, somebody has very kindly given us an old concrete coal bunker, which has got the perfect little door for quail. So we're going to build a hard stand in and put the concrete bunker on. That'll be the inside, and then they'll have an area outside. So hopefully by next year we should have some quail up in the orchard.
Lovely. So as you can probably hear, we have some sheep, and I believe these are donkeys. So tell us a bit about them.
The donkeys were probably the instigators of the farm, really. Jeff's always had some animals here, and 8 years ago now, it was actually mine and Ian's silver wedding, and Ian bought me 2 donkeys. So we rented a paddock off Jeff to keep the donkeys in, and that sort of started building up what we wanted to do with the farm. The sheep, we've had 4 for 5 years now, and then the other 4 are the lambs that we get each springtime. We get 4 lambs that are either orphans or the triplets from a farm over in Swavesey, and we get 4 of them so that people in the village and surrounding villages, they can come and bottle feed them so that they get a chance to get up and close with the lambs. But they don't get named because they disappear in February. We have apple, pear, 1 fig tree and a couple of olive trees. There are some plum trees, but it's very rare we get plums off them.
What's this big area here?
This is probably the biggest field on the farm on our right now. It's mostly used for the donkeys and ponies. We have 2 Welsh mountain ponies as well. The cattle have this at the beginning of the year. The cattle like to eat longer grass. So over the winter, the cattle go into a smaller field and the ponies and donkeys go into a smaller field to give the big field a chance to catch up. And when we've got new growth, then in the sort of late spring, beginning of summer, we move the cattle back in so that they can have the new grass. And then once they've taken off all the main top grass, then the donkeys and ponies come back in as well, because they can eat the lower grass where the cattle don't really. During the winter, the cattle are moved into a smaller field, which we're just approaching now. We do leave it for a couple of months before they go back in, so there is some growth in there. But usually over the winter we tend to feed the cattle on hay and pellets.
So what are we coming up to in the distance here? Is this some kind of thing to feed?
When the cattle are in the smaller field, they do churn it up a real lot. We've got Highland cattle, and as you can imagine, they're really heavy. So when in the winter months when it's quite wet, it does get very muddy, and if we put the feed on the floor, it just gets trampled into the mud. So Jeff built, like, it's a big manger really, like you'd have inside. It's just got a lift up roof, and we put the hay in there to keep it out of the weather really during the winter. But like I said, at the minute this field's empty, waiting. It's probably be end of November we'll put the cattle back in there.
Right, okay, so they're there for the winter months.
Yeah.
Are these llamas we're approaching now?
No, they're alpaca.
Oh, they're alpacas.
Yeah. These were, a lady unfortunately was having to lose her field. They've actually come from near Bristol. I think we've probably had them about 4 years. We've got 3, all different colours. We've got a black one, a white one and a beigey coloured one. The black one is Dominic, the white one is Drummond, and the beigey colour one is Dazzler. But they're really easy to look after. They just sort of do their own thing, really. They do get pellets in the morning. They like the cereal for breakfast. The only thing really that we have to do with them, we get them sheared once a year, and that's, I think it was sort of late April, May time when the shearer comes and shears them ready for the summer.
And this black little building here, is this where they sleep?
I can't say they always sleep in it. It just depends on the weather. It's just a field shelter that they can get into if they want to. Alpacas seem quite hardy really, and they do spend most of the time outside, but they can, it's just open all the time. It's mainly only if it's really stormy they'll go inside, or if it's really raining hard then they shelter, but more often than not they're quite hardy and stay out in the field.
In this field here we have some more cows, is that right?
Yeah, we've got 3 Highland cattle. They were all born here. The reddish coloured one is a male and the other 2 are female. They're all different mums but had the same father, but we've kept them here. We couldn't keep everything, so the father and the mother's moved on to another farm, and we just kept these 3. But they're in this field for now because again the grass had got quite long, so we've put them in here, but they'll move out of here into the winter paddock, and then the donkeys and ponies will come into this field for the winter.
Okay, so here we have a greenhouse. What do you grow in here?
We've got tomatoes, peppers, chilies and aubergine at the moment. We do grow some salad leaves in there, but it's not a great deal really. It's just the tomatoes actually do better outside than in the greenhouse, but it's doing okay. The aubergines are coming on at the minute, so it's alright.
So down here we have this massive wooden barn. What animals are in there?
That's officially the cow shed, but it all depends on which animals we've got in which fields. It's split into 3 sections, so whichever animals are in the paddock where we're right now, where the cattle are at the minute, can come into one end, and then the animals that were in the main field where we talked about the donkeys and the sheep and the ponies, they can get in from the other side, and the other side has got 2 parts so they can split off if they want to. So it's just open all of the time and they can shelter if they want to.
So now we come to another little allotment, Janet, so tell us about that.
That's mainly mine. I decided I'd like to grow some fruit and veg, and obviously Jeff's got the ideal plot for it here. So I think this is our 3rd year. Duncan, who works on the farm with me, helped me dig it all over, and then at the beginning of this year they built me an enclosed area because, as anybody who gardens knows, everything else would rather eat your plants than let it grow for you. So they built me an enclosed area where chickens can't get in, the goats can't get at it, so the plants that would normally get eaten by other things are in there, and then the more hardy plants are out in the main part of the allotment.
So down here we have some chickens and goats.
Yeah, we've got an area just off the main stable yard, which is where the chicken coop is. We have got a few different coops. We had the original coop where we had perhaps about 30 chickens in it, but then we actually rescued some ex-battery hens this year at the beginning of lockdown actually. So we opened up an extra coop to put those in separate initially. They all mingle together anyway. But then also sort of in the middle of the year probably, a lady wanted to get rid of a couple of bantam chickens, which are the tiny ones, so we didn't want those in the main coop because they do get picked on a little bit, so we've got a little extra coop what the bantams go in at night. During the day they're free to range wherever they want to, but we lock them up at night just for safety from foxes and predators, or cats perhaps, or dogs.
So here we have a little bridge for the goats, I assume, to get from field to field.
Yeah, when we first got goats we just had 4 of them, and they were in the paddock, a smaller paddock which is still on our left at the moment, which was fine. But then as things have gone on, the goats have got increased, and we've now got 13 goats. So quite a few years ago now, Jeff decided they should be in the main field as well, but obviously they couldn't get from one to the other. I wanted something for the goats to be able to climb on. They do like being up high. So he combined the two and made the bridge so it crosses over the path. The goats can get from one field to the next without us having to sort of herd them in and out through gates.
So here we have some pigs. Tell us about them.
They're a crossbreed of pigs. We used to get pigs from Shuttleworth Agricultural College, and we used to buy them in as weaners, which is when they stopped feeding off the mothers. The one that looks like a saddleback, actually, that she's got a black body with pink over her shoulders, she was one that we bought from Shuttleworth, and we kept her, and we actually bred her, and I think she's had 3 lots of piglets, but we've 2 pigs here that are with her, and they're actually her daughters. We have bred both of those last year. We used to have a big boar called Bertie, but unfortunately he passed away earlier in the year, so we haven't actually bred them this year. If you come and you see them, they actually look quite different. One of them is all pink, one of them is black with the pink stripe, but they are actually the same type. It's just that they're a cross between a long white and a saddleback, so they get a mixture of market. We've had spotty pigs, stripy pigs, the pink one with a black tail. You just get a combination of different things. But the 3 little boas that we spoke about that had come from auction, we're hoping to keep one of those to breed with the bigger pink pig down here, so hopefully next year we may get our own piglets again.
We've got 2 more fields to go. What's usually based in this field?
This was actually one big field until earlier in the year, and Duncan and Ian split it with the new fence across the middle. We actually want this to be just for pigs. The 3 pigs we've just spoken about are going to be moved into the first half of this new split, and then the goats will be getting the smaller field that the pigs are in at the minute. The top half of this is we've just been given 2 pot-bellied pigs, which were somebody's pets. Unfortunately, they've had to move house and unfortunately couldn't take them with them. So they've come here. So they've gone in the top bit of that, so they can stay in there now. Each paddock, in fact every paddock or field that we have has got shelter so that the animals can come and go in and out of shelter as they want to.
Okay. Thank you, Janet, for giving us a walkthrough of the farm, and we look forward to seeing you next time. That's it for part 1 of this farm special of the Switch Now podcast, and we'll be back next time with part 2. The Switch Now podcast was presented by Ross Watchman, compiled and produced by Ross Watchman and Sean Mardlin.